Just give it 2 seconds and then it'll come in. Right, we'll go, shall we? So, welcome to part 3 of the Razor Performance podcast. Today, we're going to be speaking to Ollie Shorts. We're going to be talking about him doing the Marathon des Sables, but also talking about some of his charity work, some of his running in costume, and why he does those things. My name's Andy. I run Razor Performance. I've trained Ollie not for the Marathon des Sables, but just through a bit of injury. So I help people with breaking repetitive injury cycles or helping people with injuries. I like to help people get super strong. And then for some people, I help them try and do extraordinary things that Ollie has done, but not yet through my coaching. Ollie, mate, do you want to tell us a little bit just about you, how you got into running? Were you always a runner, and how that sort of built up over time?
Yeah, no, I certainly always wasn't a runner. Didn't run in school. Played a bit of rugby in school, under 19s, under 20s. Then started playing social rugby, and at 30, gave up completely and had about 8 years where I ate poorly, drank too much beer and wine, and got out of shape, and then sort of had a semi-midlife crisis and decided I quite fancied running a marathon and signed up for New York in 2009. And that was actually my first running race outside of a school 5K when I was 16. So I went straight in for the full marathon, and yeah, just got the bug after that, really.
And how did that first one go?
No, sub 4. I was going for sub 4. I had a few mates who'd run marathons before, so I sort of went off their times. So I think I ran 3:52 in the end. So yeah, got my target, and then just sort of realized that that actually wasn't as bad as I thought. And that was in November 2009, and then the following February I ran Barcelona with a mate of mine and ran like 3:29. We were going for sub 3:30, and then about 6 weeks after that ran one in Belfast and ran 3:06, much to the disgust of my mate who I'd run the 3:29 with. And then from there just sort of spiraled on.
Yeah, so you got a bit of a talent for it.
I wouldn't say that.
It sounds like you had a natural talent getting in and just running a 3:06 just like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose my training in those days was pretty basic. I was just going out and running and just trying to get fit and sort of make sure I could last the distance as I sort of progressed a bit and tried to get, like, the goal then from 3:06 was sub 3, and that took a bit longer to get to, and the training had to change a bit. But again, part of that was psychological as well. I think it's just a number really, but you sort of get a bit head up and maybe over focused on just like those 2 minutes, because I went from 3:06 to 3:04, another 3:04, 3:02, and it was becoming a bit of a barrier, and I couldn't do it. I actually went off the booze for about 8 weeks in the run up to Boston and ran 3:04:22 or something, which was a 5-second PB, but I was disgusted.
Devastated.
I trained well, and I was like, yeah, this is not happening. And I had signed up for Edinburgh and Belfast the May after that. And this shows how it's psychological, actually. I had both marathons booked, and I was going to skip Edinburgh if Leinster got to the final of the Heineken Cup. I was down in Dublin the May Bank holiday weekend watching Leinster play Toulouse in the semi-final. And I was delighted because they won, because I was going to the final then with the lads. But I was there, right, I'm going to have to go. I was living in Belfast at the time, so I'm going to have to go back to Belfast because the marathon's on Monday, and I'm going to have a crack at that. The night didn't go quite as planned when we went back to Lansdowne Rugby Club. I think I ended up having a few too many pints and a kebab on the way home, and then drove back up to Belfast feeling a bit hungover, and woke up on the Monday morning and went out and ran a 2:59.
Hey, there you go. Something to be said for the kebab and beers.
New form of carb loading.
And then, so you continued to run marathons, but then you wanted to do some stuff for charity. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that came about?
Yeah, my first marathon I did do for charity, just for children with cancer. And I've done a few other things for charity, but more recently, when you've run quite a few marathons, it's quite difficult to get friends and family and businesses to sponsor you if you're saying you're doing another marathon. So unfortunately, my wife was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer back in 2 years ago, 2022, called sarcoma, and she got through her first bout of that. So I was there, I'm going to raise a bit of money for the charity. And then sort of thought, well, like London Marathon, nobody's gonna want to do anything for me. So they had a couple of costumes, bone costumes. It's a soft tissue and bone cancer. So they had a bone costume, and I said, right, let's get that, let's get that and give that a lash. So that got me into the fancy dress side of things, and yeah, I'm signed up again for next year to push through on the bone. Managed to just about break the world record with my bad back that you've fixed now, by the way.
Good plug, thanks.
Yeah, so we'll be back again in 2025 to try and knock a few more minutes off it.
Yeah. So what's the target in 25?
I think we'll probably go for. I ran 3:43 dead this year, but I'd broken the half world record and run 1:28. So I'm thinking maybe 3:15 to 3:18 we'll go for. So.
All right, amazing. So the Marathon des Sables, what was the thought process behind doing that? How did that come about from marathon running? How did you get to that point?
I think when I got into running and I was doing a bit more research and training, I came across, it was a documentary, it was on YouTube at the time, or Discovery Channel or something. James Cracknell did it back in, I don't know what year it was, but it was sort of documenting his training and preparation and how he got on. And as a result of that, I thought, I quite fancy having a crack at that again, just trying to maybe push. I'd done maybe 10 marathons at that point, and I was there quite fancy doing something a bit different, like ultra wise. So, and that just sort of got me hooked on it. I had a mate who had sort of agreed to do it with me, but he I'm not going to name any names, but he bottled it quite early. Back in those days, I'm not sure how it is now, but this was 2013 I did it. You had to sign up a good year in advance and put a deposit down and get in there quickly, because it was, there's only 1,100 odd places on it. I think it's not quite as popular now. So yeah, just signed up for it as a result of watching that documentary to try and inflict more pain myself. Yeah.
So do you want to just, if people don't know what it involves, the Marathon des Sables, what does it look like? What's the challenge?
So it's basically it's a multi-stage race. So it's a 5-stage race over 7 days in the Sahara, self-sufficient. So each year the course is different. It's approximately 250 kilometers over the 5 stages. Self-sufficient, as I said. So you carry everything with you, your backpack, your food. There's certain minimum requirements. They give you an emergency flare, an anti-venom pump you have to bring for scorpion bites and snake bites and things like that. And then pretty much whatever else you want food-wise. So you can bring, if you want to bring the kitchen sink and a change of clothes for every day, you can pop them in your bag and bring them with you. But obviously the more you've got, the more weight you've got on your back. So the only thing you don't bring is your tent. They put up like a Bedouin-style tent on at each camp each night, so they go ahead in trucks, and the camp will be set up at the finish line when you get in at the end of the day. And then they ration you to, I think it was like 10 litres of water a day to drink, wash and cook with. So approximately every 10 kilometers you'll go through a checkpoint and they give you 2 1.5 litre bottles of water, so you don't have to carry all your water with you. But yeah, so that was pretty much it. So you head out there in your one set of gear and keep going. And yeah, obviously North Africa, Sahara, pretty hot. Got up to about, the year I did it, I think on the long day, it got up to about 54.5 degrees.
Wow.
But then funnily enough, in the evenings, it got dark very early, but you would be lying in bed very hot. But come about 10 o'clock, the temperature would drop down to maybe 6 degrees. So you're going from like an oven to actually shivering in your sleeping bag at night. So
yeah. All right, so let's come to that a little bit. Let's come to the actual race in just a bit. So what does training look like for that? You said you had to sign up a year in advance. I'm assuming that, well, I would suggest that you would need to train that long anyway, but I'm assuming that's why they do it. And what does that what does it look like? What did it look like leading up to it? What was your sort of end point that you knew, actually, I feel like I'm ready to do this now?
So I knew probably 18 months out, and so let's say that's 2012. I had 3 marathons lined up for that. So I just continued my normal training for that period, obviously knowing I could run 26 miles easily enough. Then a year out, probably after London in 2012, I started focusing on much slower runs, more mileage, sort of double days or double long runs at the weekend towards the end. So back-to-back 20-mile runs. Gear is obviously very important because this will come up later on. The adage, never try anything new on race day. You don't have new shoes, you've got to break them in. No new gear, nothing new at all. So I had my backpack bought nice and early. I would load that up with a couple of 5-kilo weights wrapped in towels and a couple of. I started off with tinned tomatoes actually before I got the weights, but a couple of those burst on one of my runs, so that caused the problem. So I invested in a couple of weights to put in there, and just basically, I suppose from training in a marathon, your pace is very different running over there because again, when we get to the race, the terrain, there's one day that's very sandy, but there's a lot more mountains there or hills than I thought when I was researching it. So some of the days you are going slow uphill literally on a rope climbing up a mountain. So there's a bit of walking involved, but even the running is a lot slower. So it's just getting the legs used to running at 9-10 minute mile pace as opposed to 6.5-7 minute mile pace.
Yeah. And at the time, I know because I know you now and we've done some training since then. You weren't strength training at all at the time?
No.
There you go. And all right, so you said you needed nothing new on the day. So assuming then you needed to test the nutrition out to start off with?
Yeah. So, and again, you've got to cook. So you have a little stove, and they give you the tablets that you buy when you get there. So you're literally boiling your water in a tiny little cup and adding this. All I can say about the food is I did try it all out and I found the stuff I liked, but in that type of heat, and when you're doing it and again, maybe I sort of got scared on the plane out there. This is jumping ahead a bit, but the company that organised it, you fly to Gatwick, and the Irish, English, I was living in Dublin at the time, the Irish, English, and I think the South African contingent all fly out together. So I got sitting on the plane and there's lads with spreadsheets out, this is my nutrition. I was very basic. I had it written down on a bit of paper, shoved in my bag. Obviously everything in a Ziploc bag labelled each day, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. But when I got out there, the food, it became so hard to eat because of the heat and probably the exhaustion as well. Like by day 3, I couldn't eat my porridge in the morning. It was just,
What did a day look like? What did initially the day look like from a nutrition perspective?
So I brought a lot of nuts because you're looking at the calorie to weight ratio as well, because you want your bag to be as light as possible or as light as it physically can be. Now, again, they check everything. I think the minimum requirement they looked for a day was 2,000 calories a day. So you had to have 12,000 calories worth of food in your bag as a minimum. So a lot of like Brazil nuts, almonds, jelly babies were great. The standard gels. Morning, I was having porridge with raspberries and then like a spaghetti bolognese for lunch and dinner out of a bag. But yeah, pretty grim.
And when you say out of a bag, you mean sort of like a add water job, or
add water, basically boil the water, tip the water in the bag, shake it up, and get it into you.
Awesome. So all right, so you flew out day 1. What are you nervous about?
I'll rewind a little bit about never trying anything new. A week before I was due to travel, my backpack decided to fall apart. The zip went, one of the straps went. So I frantically ordered it, couldn't get that bag again. So I frantically ordered a new one off like one of the specialist websites or guys that had trained people. So it was an MDS bag. It literally arrived 2 days before I was due to leave, so I packed it up, did one run in it. But you get to Gatwick, you rock up, they put you in a lovely hotel for the first night, then you're on a bus for 4 hours, and then on an army truck going into the middle of the desert for about 45 minutes. You get to camp, you give them your suitcase at that point, and then they give you a proper meal, and you queue up to get checked in. So they weigh you, they check your medical certificates, and then check the contents of your bag to make sure you've got all the minimum stuff. While I was queuing up to do that, I was asking someone in front of me who had a similar bag how to work the straps, because I hadn't figured out how to fix the straps properly. So yeah, that was a bad start. That was a little bit of a worry for me initially. And then at that point, it's sort of quite real. I don't think I was ever worried that I wouldn't finish it. I was maybe a little naive in that regard. I did get a bit worried when I was chatting to people who had prepared far better than I had prepared for. But it's sort of a funny mix of people on these events. You would have the proper ultramarathon runners who are hardcore and just a little bit different to everybody else. Then you'd have like the guys like me who probably fancied themselves as ultra runners because they're sort of reasonably fast marathon runners. And then you had a small group of people who didn't do much running at all and probably hadn't prepared for it that well at all and probably shouldn't be there. That much smaller, they're a much smaller proportion. But you can sort of definitely see the ultra runners looking down a little bit at the marathon runner. You have no idea what you're letting yourself in for here. And I definitely did get a bit of that the night before in Ozarat, where we were staying in the hotel before we went out to the desert. I was there, oh dear, maybe I should have taken this a bit more seriously and gone to a heat chamber and run on a treadmill.
But I mean, I remember you saying a while ago, you know, the sort of percentage of people are finishing is quite high, because actually only people who are the majority of people who do these types of things, they know they're fit enough to do it, and they've taken it, you know, they understand how serious it is. So they've done all the preparation and they know what's sort of coming. I think with any event, you know, if it's your first time, there's always going to be someone that's done more than you, isn't there? And has the Excel spreadsheet up. But you know, let's talk about it. So go on then. So I mean, yeah, day one, start line. What do the days sort of look like? And tell us about sort of the struggles as time goes on, and what you know, what changed. You know, what you have to, obviously, I'm assuming you carried less, but at the same time, I'm assuming your feet got worse.
Yeah. So the 5 stages, again, when you check in, they give you the booklet of what's happening each day, but each year it's pretty much the same. Day 1 is approximately 38k. Day 2 is the Jebel day, or the mountain day, so it's shorter. I think it was 30 or 32k, but there was 3 like 1200 meter climbs on it.
Oh.
And then day 3 is about another maybe 38, 40k. Day 4 is what's known as the long day, which is like anything from 80 to 95k. I think it was like 92k the year we did it. And then the final day is like your classic marathon, 42.195 kilometers. Now there's a cut-off point each day. So there's a camel that sets off, and if the camel overtakes you, gets to the finish line before you, that's you. You're gone. You're not running again the next day. The long day, which is the one everyone builds up to, because it's obviously you're 4 days in and your feet everything's a bit shot. But the long day, the cut-off point is, I think, 36 hours. So you have a choice if you want to sleep in one of the checkpoints overnight and go again. But obviously the benefit of finishing within, like at nightfall, is you get a full day's rest. So you get back to your tent at whatever time, 9 in the evening, and you've got all of the following day off to recover before the marathon, which is what I went for. But day 1, you're very enthusiastic. You know, they play Highway to Hell by AC/DC. There's like a few helicopters doing a flyover. Everyone's raring to go. One of the guys in our tent. So again, the first night you sort of they pair you up by country. So you're in a tent with 7 other guys, and it tends to be by country or mates. So I travelled on my own. So I was in a tent with 7 Irish lads who I literally only met on the flight on the way out.
Yeah.
So you get to know each other pretty well over the course of the week. One of the guys, Ironman triathlete, he actually suffered badly on the first day. So obviously the heat is a massive thing, dehydration. He got severely dehydrated at the end of the first day. You have the option of taking a drip in the medical tent, but it's a 2-hour penalty if you take the drip, and you're not allowed a second one.
Across the race, so that's it.
You're allowed one intervention like that. You take your 2-hour penalty and you can go again. And unfortunately, this guy, once you get dehydrated, it's pretty hard to reverse it, even with the drip. And he struggled on day 2. He didn't make it past day 2, which is obviously, like, if you get to, even after that short time, you get to know the lads. So it's like it's not ideal when one down after 2 days is pretty bad. And that day 2 was a killer. Like 3, it was, like, as I said, the shortest day, but for me that was, again, I wasn't expecting it. Literally the last climb, you're on a queue at the top of this mountain, look to get to this rope to climb up to the top, and then like about a 5k descent to the camp. But it was an absolute killer. But funnily enough, one of the lads in the tent, who I'd never met before, who happened to live around the corner from me in Dublin, like literally, I'd say less than a kilometre away from me, I ran pretty much the whole race with him from day 1, caught up with him at a checkpoint halfway through day 1. And we ran together for the whole thing, because he was struggling a bit fitness wise, and my feet after day 2 were just horrendous. Like, I have not felt pain like it come, and it was to the point, and that was probably after the long day, where I thought I might not actually finish this. It's the first, I was lying in the tent. The lads went to get rocks so I could elevate my feet. I'd had the wounds cleaned, so there's a medical tent set up, all volunteer doctors. You go, the doc trotters are called. You go and they basically got a scalpel. They'd lance the blisters, drain them, squeeze a bit of iodine in, and then if they were very bad like mine, they tell you to go away, and they'll come back and wrap them up and strap them up in the evening. So like, I was lying in the tent on the rest day after the long day with my feet on a couple of rocks elevated, calves completely swollen. I had to cut off. I had compression socks on. I had to cut them off because my calves were swelling so much from the heat, I guess. And yeah, it was an awful sight. There was flies just landing on my open wounds on my feet, and I couldn't even move my legs to get them off.
Oh, God.
And I'm there going, God, I might not finish this. So, but somehow.
So just before we move on to the sort of final stage of the race, with there's like 2 points there. The hydration that the guy struggled with. I mean, firstly, what did he do wrong? And secondly, the feet on the second day. You said yours were bad, and sort of gave the impression that maybe some others weren't as bad. So what did he do wrong on the water, do you think? Or what's the sort of the common mistakes for hydration? And secondly, what do you think you could have done better on day 1 and 2 to save your feet a bit?
Yeah, the feet is a really tricky one. I don't think you know on the feet until you get there, because everyone's feet are different. I did all the stuff. I'd rubbed stuff in them beforehand. Your shoes as well at the start. I got some, and everyone would do this in some form. I got Velcro. I went to a cobbler's and got Velcro put around the edge of it, so I could attach the gaiters to it, which go up, which Velcroed onto the shoes and go up onto your leg to try and stop sand getting in there. But it's just impossible to stop any bit of sand getting in, which then irritates the foot even more. I'm still asking myself, if I went back to do it next year, I honestly don't know what I would do. I reckon my feet are probably more hardened now, having done it. But speaking to a lot of the lads afterwards, some people were lucky, some people were unlucky. Even going back to that James Cracknell documentary, I think he struggles with his feet as well. My issue was, it started on one foot, then it went to the other foot. So like,
yeah, no, you couldn't even hop your way down there.
So yeah, I don't really know on the feet side of things. Again, maybe my shoe choice could have been wrong. I went half a size too big, because that's what the general perception was to do, because your feet will swell a bit in the heat. Maybe I should have just stuck to a standard shoe and taken my chance on it. It might have made a difference. And then that the hydration is really difficult, because it's so hot and the water is so hot. It gets to the point where it's actually really hard to even take the water on board. And I think that's what may have happened to that guy. He physically probably couldn't keep it down. We had a big bag of salt tablets as well that they gave us. So you're popping maybe 4 or 5 salt tablets every hour as well. But the water is really and you forget because you're getting so tired and exhausted, or you run out of water a bit quicker and you've got 5K to go to the checkpoint. You might think, oh, I'll push a bit harder to go for it. So my one big learning from the race was it was about preservation. It actually wasn't anything to do with running. It was preservation with regards to the hydration, the feet, getting your sleep, and walking when you need to walk. Like, you don't have to run.
Yeah.
And now obviously the elite guys are the top 10, they're all running, but like there's a lot of guys who are just plodding along who you'd overtake, but they'd go through a checkpoint just very sort of military, plodding along at the same pace. Whereas if you're starting all the time, or you're just wearing yourself out. So yeah, preservation. It was all about preservation.
Yeah, and so you said you only have a certain amount of water. Was it 2 liters a day to wash, drink, and?
I think it was 10 or 12 liters a day.
Oh, sorry, 10. No, sorry, that 2 would be much less. That's so. I mean, how much did you need to drink?
All of it. Yeah, very, very, very rarely. Maybe the odd day you'd have a bottle left. Well, when you got back into camp, they gave you a couple of bottles for your cooking and to drink at night. Some nights you wouldn't finish those because, again, it was just, you're conscious you had to drink water, but I found it very difficult to digest and like keep it on board. It was funny, like some of the days of running, you could actually hear the water bouncing up and down in your belly. Like, it was very, very, very strange.
Yeah. And then with the food sort of day to day, you said it was sort of, you didn't really fancy eating either. Is that just the heat again, or just
the heat again, and the food not being great. Like the porridge, I found, because I love my porridge at home and it's my go-to breakfast, especially this time of year. But it was so claggy, and I literally couldn't. The evening meals were a bit better, so I sort of started doing that in the morning. I was eating spaghetti bolognese for breakfast towards the end because I just found that easier to digest. But that was meat, and then I wouldn't have that for the evening. So it was like trying to balance that. And then when all the nuts ran out, and then obviously nuts are quite difficult to eat in 50 degrees as well.
Yeah. And okay, so it gets to sort of later on in the race, day 3 and so forth. I mean, how are you coping with the feet at the time? And is it? Yeah, I mean, I'm super interested in the feet. A friend of mine's a podiatrist who goes out to the Marathon des Sables and helps with people's feet. And I've seen pictures of your feet, which we won't show now, but I've seen pictures of other people's feet, and you just, when you see it, you think, my God, how did they continue on with that, with that mess of a foot?
Yeah, I think I was managing up to the long day, but the long day, to explain as well, as I said, it's like 36-hour cutoff. The top 50 men, or top 50 overall, go off at midday. So in the midday sun, the rest of the race go off at 9 in the morning. So we went off at 9 in the morning, and we finished probably at I think it was 13 hours or 12 and a half hours. That day was the day where the feet really just got killed, because obviously I had blisters on both feet at that stage, but that was the hottest day of the whole week as well, 54.5 degrees. Like, I have a picture actually up on my wall here of myself, the other Irish lad I ran with, and another Irish guy that we bumped into that day, standing on a sand dune when it was 54.5 degrees. And we still had I'd say we probably still had 30K to go at that point. But I remember when we stopped at that point, my feet, we were going down, there was a sand dune section, and we were going down the sand dunes, which was great fun, but I was there, oh no, my feet are not good here. And you sort of know it, but you're keeping on going. So we struggled that night. Darkness came, I think it got dark maybe at 4 or 5 o'clock, something like that. And we got to a checkpoint with 10K to go. And I really struggled between those last 2 checkpoints. And the lad I was with, Aidan, I was there. If we get to this checkpoint now, I'll get home. We'll get back to the camp tonight. It'll be okay. I'll get 10K. I don't care what happens. And I was sort of buzzing a bit because the adrenaline's going. You're going one checkpoint. As soon as I got out of that checkpoint, it's nearly like the body told me, yeah, no, this isn't going to be, this isn't the foregone conclusion that you're going to rock this 10K nice and easily, because you shouldn't be running, walking, let alone doing anything the way your feet are. And then actually I started to hallucinate. I said to Aidan, did you see that there? And this lad was a seasoned ultra runner, and he just started laughing because he knew I'd never run further than 42K before. And he was there, what did you see? And I said, it's just like that dust, like it's like a black thing came out of the dust there. All the dust was around, like those dust devils in Harry Potter. There, yeah. You didn't see anything. And then we passed the sand dune, and I was convinced I saw my mother sitting with Jim Morrison drinking a bottle of Jameson. And my mother had passed away in 2012, and at that point I knew I was hallucinating, which again was a very strange. Nothing like that has ever happened to me before. Like I was completely gone.
Yeah,
completely gone. And you can see the check. You can see the finish line in the distance. But again, it's probably at that point it was probably still about 4 kilometers away, and I was going from side to side. And luckily the lad I was with was experienced in dealing with that. So he said, just follow my torch now and keep with me. So yeah, he got me back that night. But my feet then the next morning were, horrendous. I think probably because I started hallucinating, then that took away. I probably was just like floating around, so I wasn't feeling any pain until I woke up the next morning.
And that next morning was the final day, or you?
Yeah, so because we'd gone in a day before the cutoff, so we had a full day of rest again, which was like a nice thing about the camp, because you'd go. Well, it allowed me to go and get my feet treated, put my feet up for the afternoon, and then it's sort of tradition that you always go and wait for the last runners to cross the line, so that are just ahead of the camel. Obviously, then you see the guys that unfortunately miss out, but most of the camp would go to the finish line just to clap in the guys that are just making the cutoff, which was a good part of the day. And they give you a can of Diet Coke. That's your treat. Or Diet Coke.
Lovely.
I don't even drink. I hate Coca-Cola or any colas, but I did absolutely demolish my warm can of Coca-Cola that day.
I love a Diet Coke, so I would. That would be amazing for me. Okay, so then sleep that night and into the final day, I suppose.
Yeah, final day. There was a couple of lads in the tent beside us dropped out, so he had some of these hiking sticks. So I said, he offered to lend them to me because he could see I was struggling. So I popped them in the side of my backpack, just in case I needed them. But I didn't use them in the end. I got through in a lot of pain. Very slow marathon, probably about 5.5 hours, I think. I think when you get to that point, it's just like you're going to yourself, it's just 4 or 5 hours of pain, but you're not backing out at that point. I think once the gun went and I started moving, I was there. There's no way I'm not going to do this, even if I have to crawl. Again, your sort of head, the mental side of it takes over. And again, when I crossed the finish line, I was in bits. I was carried to the bus the next day when the race finished. I couldn't walk at that point. It took me about an hour to get from the tent up to the dinner in camp that night. But yeah, great buzz when crossing the finish line. The final checkpoint you go through again, it's about 10K to go, as I said. Hilarious to see all the lads, probably like me 2 nights before, thinking they're in the final stretch now. I remember a couple of guys. There's always a Dino. There was a guy called Dino shouting his own name, sprinting past us with about 9K to go. And we're plodding along. We saw him in a heap round the corner about 1 kilometre later. God, come on, mate, you can still do it. And great feeling crossing the finish line. The race organizer there puts the medal around your neck, and fall over
and pray for your feet.
Yeah.
So what would be? What would be the sort of high? I'm assuming the finish is a high point, but was there any like real highs or like the biggest lows?
I think probably the biggest low was, it probably would have been that between after the long day, when I really thought, like, I was there, like, how am I going to run a marathon in 20 hours time when I can, like, it's taken me 30 minutes to get to the medical tent because I'm like, I basically can't walk. I'm like squealing every time I lift my foot to walk. And there, like, I actually was in the tent that day thinking, not a chance. Like, how am I going to do it? Now, there were a few painkillers involved for sure, but but it's mind over matter. That was definitely the low point, and then obviously, yeah, the high point is definitely finishing it. And the buzz around camp at the beginning was good as well. You know, a lot of funny stories. There's no toilets obviously in the desert, and day one, everyone would walk, you know, about 100 meters from the tents, to go to the loo, and by day 3 or 4, people were going about 5 meters. So you'd stick your head out of the tent in the morning to get your breath of fresh air and see some pretty scary sights.
Some fairly dark I'd imagine. And if you were gonna, I know we've been through a few of the bits, but if someone was thinking about doing this, you know, from a training perspective, and then from, you know, doing it perspective, what would you say to them?
Like, definitely preparation is needed. Get a bag that isn't going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Or maybe don't buy it as early as I did. Maybe I was too keen or put too much weight in it. But yeah, training in the gear, and I think it's just getting used to running at that pace. Now, you know, everyone's different, and everyone's budget for training is different. As I said, I know a lot of the guys that I spoke to went up to Loughborough and went into heat chambers and things like that. Do you need to do that? Like, it's going to help for sure if you want it, but if you're doing it just to finish and for the experience, I don't think it's necessary. Try the food out 100%. If I went back again, maybe I would live for 3 or 4 days on that food just to see how it was. That sounds a bit extreme, but that probably would have made me realize that I wasn't going to be able to stomach the porridge by day 3. But again, you can't really replicate 15 degree heat.
That porridge you're going to make me this morning, you just make it really terrible.
Yeah,
as bad as you can possibly make it.
Yeah. So that's that.
I suppose, would you recommend it? You know, having done it, would you say, if someone said they're thinking about it, and you think that they were, you know, fit enough, prepared enough, and they were sort of, you know, would you say go for it? Is a
100%? Because, you know, like, particularly in this day and age, you're out in the desert and you're in the middle of nowhere. You've no mobile phone. There's a satellite phone there, obviously, for emergencies. The year I did it, you were allowed to queue up and send emails, and then if you were receiving emails, they came into the camp. And actually, there's one of the, like, they had volunteers for each of the countries that were there, and they bring your emails around to the tent of the night each night. But it's just been in the middle of nowhere. It was nice silence, clear skies, great for the headspace. No phones, no work, and that side of it, because you can't get that anywhere else. Like, I haven't got that since. Just being sounds a bit hippie, being at one with nature, just in the middle of nowhere, lying in a tent. And
do you know, I don't think I just think more and more these days, though, because I spoke to a mate of mine, Ian, who I helped with his Yukon 1000 canoeing thing, and he's you know, same, you know, he had a satellite phone. It's all self-sufficient. It's like, right, can I do this all on my own, essentially? And like you say, to be away from life for a few days I think is getting more and more is what people are looking for, really, which is probably not well, anyway. But with the when it got to sort of the really tough times, I know people sort of talk about mental resilience and how you might sort of cope with it and stuff like that. Firstly, do you think you've always been fairly you know, strong-minded and sort of resilient mentally? And secondly, was there anything that sort of helped you in those times?
I think you have to be slightly touched to run a marathon. It has to be like, and to do ultras, you got to be even more. It's like a different type of person altogether. But what I sort of enjoyed about marathons, and then again, this sounds a bit weird, but no matter how fit you are, if you're running to how you've trained, you're going to go through a bad patch at some point. Like, there's never a race where you're not going to go through a bad patch. And I I always enjoyed that in marathons because, like, you know it's coming, and it can come like that. You can be perfect at mile 21, and then at 22 feel like your world is falling apart. So it's just sort of getting through that. And I sort of, some days you get through it, some days you don't. I suppose more often than not, you sort of do, and you learn then, okay, I'm going to struggle here for a mile or so, but I'm going to get through it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully in a mile or so. And you think about, like, I suppose the MDS was a bit different because you are in the middle of nowhere. And there were definitely a few moments, like I was running with that guy, and there were different moments where we'd sort of separate ourselves a bit, and you'd just be having your own thoughts. I mean, you're thinking about family, you're thinking about just, yeah, stuff like that to try and push you through. So,
but you think it's, yeah, so previous experiences, you know, sort of deep down, you know, your body can sort of cope with it, even though you're doing something you haven't done, but because you've run so many marathons, you know you're going to go through bad patches, and it's expected. And I suppose that's a little bit of training as well, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah. But I suppose the hallucination side of things, I wasn't prepared for that. That was like, yeah, that was a different level.
Well, funnily enough, I mean, the reason I wanted to talk to you and others about this stuff is just because I find that those things are the things people are going to not know about, you know, and not expect. And I think it's funny to listen to, but at the same time, it's good to know, because you know, if someone was going to go over there and they didn't meet an Irish guy who had done it before, and they were hallucinating, then you know they don't know where to. It's something that they can expect, hopefully, if they listen to this.
Yeah, true. But yeah, no, I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah. All right. So what's next for you?
Well, I'm back doing. Thankfully, I'm back running again now. So I am back in the bone costume for London in 2025. So running for Sarcoma UK again. As we said, we're trying to get the world record down to 3:15-ish. So give my Instagram a plug, Bone Runner 33.
There you go, mate. Plug it.
You can get the link.
Mate. Sorry, Karen. Plug the charity.
Yeah, link for the Just Giving is in that page, and yeah, it'll be a bit more active now going forward that the training has started again. So
yeah, awesome, mate. That is super interesting. Well, I think we're gonna go back to training together in a bit anyway. So I won't wish you too much luck, because I'm gonna try and take luck out of the equation. But mate, really appreciate you coming on and talking about it. I think that's fascinating. I think it'd be really helpful for anyone thinking about doing it.
No worries. Good talking to you. Yeah.
Right, I'm just going to stop the old recording.